Within 5 minutes of rolling her suitcase into my cabin, my friend Megan asked me a question, and before my brain even had a chance to catch up, before I could list out every reason it might not work, I already knew the answer. It was yes. Hi everyone, I'm Laura, and welcome to Sunrise at Sea. This morning we're sailing along the coast of Iceland. I'm out on the balcony, and it's a gray morning, more clouds than sun, the kind of Icelandic morning that doesn't try to perform for anybody. The water's a deep, flat color, more silver than blue, and the air's cool enough that I'm glad for the cappuccino warming my hands. There's a quiet to it, the kind you only get when the weather isn't putting on a show. I'm not going to give you a historical fact about Iceland this morning. I don't need one. This is the actual water it happened in, or close enough to it. This is where Megan and I were, 5 a.m, slow internet, hot drinks in hand, when a lot of what I'm about to tell you actually started. So here's what happened. My friend Megan and I have known each other for over a year and a half now, ever since we met on a cruise together. The kind of trip that quietly rearranges your whole life without asking permission first. 2 weeks ago, we were sailing again, this time on a much bigger trip, a group cruise. And Megan was staying in my cabin with me. But if I'm honest, the first yes in this story wasn't hers. It was mine. And it happened 10 days before she ever set foot on the ship. 10 days. I'd made some friends with people that were working on another ship about a year ago. And they meant a lot to me. We'd become friends along the way. And it hit me that Megan would love meeting them too. Not just any friend of mine. Her specifically. The problem was timing. There were only 10 days before the cruise started. And Megan was in Costa Rica with her husband, with her whole life set up exactly the way it already was. Flying to London to join a 2-week cruise alone, leaving her husband behind on 10 days' notice. That's not a small ask. That's a big one. So I did something I've been trying to get better at its own separate practice. I recorded her a voicemail, 16 minutes long. I didn't mean for it to be 16 minutes. It just turned out that way. I told her the whole vision, how much fun I thought it could be, why I wanted her there specifically. And over in that message, I kept saying, it's okay if you say no. You won't hurt my feelings. I understand it's a long shot. Because I've been working on this lately, actually saying the thing out loud instead of just carrying it around in my head. Things like, I love you, I miss you, I need this. That hurt my feelings, whatever it is. Saying it, not just feeling it privately and hoping someone eventually notices. I thought there was a 90% chance, at least 90%, that the answer was going to be no. I really did. Megan and her husband listened to that voicemail together, and he told her, you have to go. So she said yes. So when she rolled her suitcase into my cabin 10 days later, I already knew something about her that maybe I hadn't fully let myself notice yet. That she says yes to, even when it costs her something, even when it's a long shot, even from Costa Rica. 5 minutes, that's how long it took. She hadn't even fully unpacked yet. Her suitcase was still standing up in the middle of the floor, zipper half undone, and she turned to me and said, I had this idea. What do you think about us hosting a group cruise together? And I said, yes. No, let me think about it. Not, let's talk logistics first. Not even a real pause. The kind where you look up at the ceiling like the answer's written up there somewhere. Just yes. And everything fired at once in my head, all at the same time, like a whole panel of lights switching on in one motion. I knew I could trust her. I knew we would figure out all the hard parts as they came along, because we always had before, on smaller things, on harder days than this one. I knew our purpose and our why were aligned, that this would be fun for us and for everyone we brought into it. Every benefit lit up in my mind at once. And here's the part I actually want you to hear. The part that still surprises me when I think back on it. None of the reasons it might not work showed up at all. Not even one. I didn't give myself a single second to talk myself out of it. And I didn't even notice I wasn't doing that until later. Until I was trying to explain the whole thing to someone else and realized, oh, I skipped a whole step everybody else usually takes. I wonder if you've had a moment like that, where your whole body says yes before your mind even shows up to the conversation, where you just know, and the knowing arrives faster than the doubt does, for once in your life. Trusting someone that fast isn't something I've always been good at, honestly. I've spent a lot of years being the person who needed proof first, references, a track record, time to watch how somebody handled things before I'd hand them anything real. And here I was, saying yes to building an entire business with a friend, on the spot, off of nothing but a year and a half of knowing her in one honest look across the cabin. Was I scared? Even a little? Underneath the yes? Not really. Did that surprise me? Completely. Did I sit there afterward waiting for the fear to arrive late, the way it usually does? Honestly, yes, a little. And it just never showed up. Here's the thing, though. That yes didn't come out of nowhere. I don't think it could have, actually. Not a year and a half ago. Maybe not even 6 months ago. I think I had to become a different kind of person first, in small, unglamorous ways, before I was capable of a yes that fast. Let me tell you about my whiteboards. I have them up on my wall in my cabin, a to-do list and a loose schedule, usually for today and for tomorrow, so I don't lose track of things as I think of them. Right now, today's board has things like a dinner reservation at 6, getting my laundry done, scheduling an excursion while I'm here on my last week in Norway, and a note listing the things I want to try to film before I get off this ship, all mixed together. No separate sections for important versus unimportant, because honestly, I stopped believing in that separation a while ago. And here's the truth. This whiteboard has completely replaced my Google Calendar. Completely. I genuinely cannot open a Google Calendar anymore. Every single time I sit down at my laptop and think about putting something into a calendar, I stop myself before I even click on it. My hand actually hesitates over the mouse. It feels too close to my old work life, too close to who I used to have to be back when every 15 minutes of my day belonged to someone else. The whiteboard has this little square in the front of each item, and I get to check it off. And there's something so satisfying about that little square, honestly, more satisfying than there ever was clicking a box in a calendar app. And Megan noticed something about me during this 2-week cruise, something I hadn't even noticed about myself. She noticed that when everything on the list doesn't get checked off, when Friday shows up and half of Thursday's squares are still empty, I don't spiral about it. I don't stress. She looked at it one day, just looked at that half-finished board sitting there, unbothered, and said, "I'm just proud of you that you're not living and stressing every day according to your to-do list." That stopped me for a second because she was right. And because I used to be a completely different person about this. I used to measure whether a day was good or bad by how much I checked off. That was how I felt value. That was how I felt purpose. That was what I thought joy was, actually. Or the closest thing I let myself have to it, back before I understood the difference between the two. Maybe your version isn't a whiteboard. Maybe it's something else entirely. Some other place in your life where you've quietly stopped needing to control every outcome perfectly. Where you've let something be good enough instead of finished. I bet you already know exactly what it is. I bet it came to mind the second I said it. Some little private thing you didn't expect me to name out loud. So when Megan asked me that question 5 minutes into unpacking, I wasn't the same woman who used to need the whole plan mapped out before she'd commit to anything. I had already been practicing this, just in smaller rooms with smaller stakes, one little square at a time, for months, without ever calling it practice. And then the house showed up, because it always does. If you let the yes come first and trust it'll catch up. Our planning session started around 5 a.m, which honestly could have gone very differently if we weren't both morning people. But we are, thank goodness. So instead of being a disaster, it turned into something I'll probably remember for the rest of my life. We got upgraded to a bigger cabin for this trip, and Megan had the actual king bed, the main one, and I was across the room on the pull-out couch, which also turned into a comfy bed. And we could see each other perfectly when the curtain was open, from where we were lying. She'd be over there with her warm lemon water, sitting up against the pillows. I'd be on my side of the room with my cappuccino almond milk. Same as usual. And we would run entire strategy sessions from bed, half awake, still in our pajamas, watching the ship pull into the port right outside the window. Norway one morning, Iceland a few mornings later, building this whole thing out loud while the world went by right there in front of us, like it had been scheduled. It wasn't all smooth either, and I think that's worth saying. Half the time the ship's internet couldn't keep up with both of us trying to research different types of plans and pricing. So we'd take turns, one of us online while the other one talked out loud. In fact, we did a lot of voice-to-text collaboration. And more than once, the internet would freeze mid-sentence because the connection gave out at exactly the wrong second. We laughed about it every single time. It never once felt like a real problem, just a funny obstacle that belonged to that particular morning. In fact, I remember her being on the phone with one of the guests coming to the cruise, and the internet kept going out, where she would keep calling him back every 2 or 3 minutes. It's not always the most reliable up here in the northern part of the world. It was honestly a little magical. I mean that, not in a soft, exaggerated way. I mean it plainly. 2 grown women in pajamas, one on lemon water, one on cappuccino, running a business plan from bed with the Norwegian coastline sliding past the window. And somehow it worked. And somehow it felt like the truest version of both of us. The parts we don't usually let people see until we trust someone completely. In under 2 weeks, and I mean this literally, less than 2 weeks, this went from a question in the cabin to something real. Pricing, an agenda, swag bags, because of course there had to be swag bags. And Megan spent an entire afternoon deciding what should go in them, like it was the most important decision either of us would make, which honestly, it kind of is. A meet and greet with icebreakers, because Megan is really good at doing that. The excursions, dinners, even one-on-one educational sessions for the people who wanted to go deeper into the parts we've both learned the hard way. We filmed 2 video announcements and a handful of shorts. And there's still more footage sitting on my laptop right now waiting for me to sit down and edit it, because we filmed faster than either of us could keep up with. And already, people had paid to join us. And more are still working on booking. All of that in less than 2 weeks, from a 5-minute conversation in a cabin that hadn't even finished being unpacked. The cruise is real now. It's not a maybe anymore. Our group cruise is actually happening August 30th. There's one more moment from those 2 weeks I want to tell you about, because it might be my favorite one, and it's the smallest one of them all. We were in port one afternoon, sitting on this beautiful bench. Water and boats and flowers and trees all around us. Nothing special planned. We were just sitting there existing for a minute. And I looked at Megan and said, "Let's just film something quick. We can tell people what we're doing." And she said, "Okay, that's it. Okay." 2 letters. No hesitation, no second thoughts. We didn't even write bullet points. We didn't have an outline. We didn't rehearse it. We didn't wait for better lighting or a better bench or a better version of ourselves. We just turned the camera on and started talking, exactly as ourselves, unscripted, unedited, and in that moment. We were just in the moment, and it turned out to be one of the most honest, true things either of us has put out into the world, not because it was polished, but because it wasn't. I keep coming back to that feeling. The idea that we might get to help people meet lifelong friends, help people fall in love with cruising the way we both have. Megan spends about a third of her life on ships, and I live on one full time now. Being able to help people budget and save and learn the same tools we've had to piece together ourselves along the way, the hard way, one mistake at a time. I think about how many people love to travel, but don't have anyone to travel with. How that particular kind of lonely doesn't get talked about very much. Showing up somewhere beautiful and having no one to turn to and say, "Can you believe this?" And I think about how much time Megan and I both spent figuring out the slow way, the expensive way, before we understood how any of this actually worked. If we can hand someone else even a shortcut through that, a friend to sit across from at dinner, a piece of knowledge that saves them real money, that feels like the whole point, more than any of the logistics ever will. Megan told me something later that I haven't been able to shake. She said she's actually been praying for a project, something to dive into, something to focus on. Her other work and initiatives were already running pretty smoothly, mostly on their own. And she wasn't bored exactly. She's definitely not a boring person. But she was looking for a sign, something worth pouring herself into. And this was it. Every single person she talked to on that ship over those 2 weeks, every conversation, every connection, none of it happens if she doesn't say yes to a 16-minute voicemail from someone asking her to fly across the world in 10 days' notice. Just being able to hand someone else that gift, even a little bit of it, is honestly one of the best feelings I've had in a long time. It's the kind of happy that doesn't need anything else added for it to feel complete. I bet there's something in your life right now, waiting on a perfect plan before you'll let yourself say yes to it. A conversation you keep rehearsing instead of having. A trip you keep almost booking. A version of yourself you keep almost becoming. On a Tuesday, in your head, and then you close the tab and go make dinner instead. And maybe none of this looks anything like your life. Maybe there's no cruise ship, no whiteboard on the wall, no friend asleep in the bed across the room with her lemon water. Maybe your yes is smaller than mine, or it just looks completely different. Signing up for the class you keep talking yourself out of, finally calling the friend you've been meaning to call for 2 months, saying yes to the coffee date, the road trip, the idea your daughter keeps bringing up at dinner that you keep changing the subject on. It doesn't have to look like mine. It honestly shouldn't, but it's the same muscle either way. Whether you're building a group cruise or just finally calling the person you've been meaning to call, the one that says yes and lets the how catch up later, because it will. It always does, if you give it a chance. I don't think you have to sail across an ocean to understand what that felt like, that pull towards something you can't fully see the shape of yet. I think most of us understand it every time we almost do something brave and then don't. You are allowed to say yes before you have it all figured out. You don't need the plan first. Nobody hands you the plan first. Not really. Not ever. The plan is allowed to come find you afterward, the way it found us at 5 a.m, in our pajamas, watching the coast go by like it had all the time in the world for us to catch up to it. So here's what I'd love for you to do. Today, just notice the one thing you've been overthinking this week. The thing you keep almost deciding on. The one sitting quietly in the back of your mind refusing to leave. Don't solve it today. Just name it, out loud if you can. To yourself, to someone else, it doesn't matter who hears it. This week, take one small, real step toward it before you let yourself talk yourself out of it again. Not the whole leap, just the first honest inch of it. Send the text, look up the class, make the call you keep rehearsing. That's enough of a square to check off for now. And going forward, keep watching for the next one. They tend to show up faster once you said yes to the first one. And I read every single comment, every one. So tell me, what's the yes you've been putting off? I actually want to know. I'll be looking for it. Even if it's small, even if it feels silly to type it out. Especially those, honestly, because those are usually the ones that matter the most once you finally say them out loud. Take good care of yourself this week. I will see you next Sunday from wherever the sea takes us.